Oh, yeah. What is up, theology nerds? This is Trip. And I think we just got done with our morning jazzercise with that music. It just made me want to lunge.
I'm warmed up.
You're warmed up? Good.
Yeah, baby.
That's what I like to hear.
I was stretching and stuff.
Yeah. And and then the people that aren't listening live are just heard our normal music. And so they're like, I don't know if I jazzercised it. Like,
Yeah, a little.
that's more of like the pole dancing as athletics routine.
I know some people who took a pole dancing class one time, and boy, it was a subject of conversation at every cocktail hour.
Oh man, I have a story to tell you when we're not on live stream.
When we're not broadcasting to the
Yeah,
world.
but um, the yeah. So we're we're excited to get to do this, and Bo, we got sent a whole bunch of questions, but I also had something
Man.
that I've told you how sometimes I wake up and I put something on a post-it pad, and then I come back to it later when I have like an
Mm-mm.
idea. Well,
No, I don't know
I
this.
have one, and I need to process it with you.
All right. And then
And
I have a story for you.
oh no, I want to hear the story first.
Oh, okay.
I want to hear a story first, but let's just say mine has it. It manages to talk about Jeffrey Epstein and
Uh-oh.
Palestine all like in one topic. I was like,
Oh.
I bet Bo could help me with this.
Oh boy. That sounds intimidating.
Yeah, doing it for the
Um,
clicks though. Just doing it for the clicks. That's called the
okay.
teaser. That's called a
Yeah.
teaser.
I have had a very strange 2 weeks. So to start, my administrative assistant, right off the bat, I just hired her. She requested the rest of July off to go on this big bike trip that she had been planning down the California coast. And so my children's minister, who I just hired, doesn't start until August. And so I've had 2 weeks. My music minister moved to Australia. So I've had 2 weeks entirely by myself here at the church building uh, for staff, I mean. And during that time, I decided to paint the office and anything that like looked antiquated or hadn't been updated in decades and decades. And so I undertook this big painting project. Well, at the same time, we're getting ready to launch a recovering from religious trauma support group. And I have been delving into religious trauma, which is not exactly what I thought it was. So I haven't checked in on this subject in probably about 10 years, and a lot of work has been done in the last 10 years. And Trip, it turns out it's work that directly impacts my upbringing. And it has become very personal to me. So I have been wrestling with the impact of being raised the way I was in my own internal life of faith and mental health and emotional health. But I'm alone in the building. I'm doing a painting project, so I'm probably high in fumes. I'm wrestling with my internal demons. And
You're just
then
generally emotionally available.
I think so.
Yeah, no, I meant
I
like, look, all these variables could be happening to me, and I'm just guessing which way this goes. Is when like there's also just a feature of Bo that I really love. It's like your emotions are you don't like have to discern them for a month before you acknowledge them, let alone deal with them. Like
okay.
you're emotionally available.
I appreciate that. That's
I
such a
thought
funny compliment.
I think it's a compliment.
No, it is good.
Like Alicia's like that, and I always
okay.
marvel at. I'm like, how does how did you how did the emotion and that experience
Yeah.
just immediately become present to you? I don't have them till
Interesting.
later. It's
Huh.
like
You have like a buffer.
yeah, it's
It goes in a queue.
yeah. My my therapist said that I said, what is this? Am I like I was talking about like some people are just really present with their emotions. They just kind of happen. And he looked at me. He goes, "That is how they work." Yeah, not
Like,
just
oh,
like they come out. And I was like, and he's like, "I think you're constipated."
oh wow, that's
Yeah.
wow.
Well, sorry for interjecting share time.
No, this is
But you were huffing paint in the church.
yeah. This is part of the process of therapy, I think. So then during that same time, we had one of our beloved members passed away suddenly, so I had to get a memorial service ready, and which caused me to also think about the passing of my own father last year. So I had that on my plate, and then some turkey took the hose that we used to water our raised beds for produce for people. The just
Like actual turkey, or like this is the
no,
word you're
no,
using for a person.
yeah,
Oh, I just had this picture of a turkey running around like, and it's like got a.
no. I was trying to be kind. Let's call this person a mischievous jester.
Okay, okay.
Um,
I don't
put
have any
our
pet turkeys though, so it's not personal. It's the pet chickens. You were like, he was being a chicken.
no. Oh, that's right. No. So somebody put a hose that we use for watering the raised beds that are available to the community down inside our window well and turned on the spigot, and it ran for about 2 hours before we found it. And the amount of water, honestly, it flooded the basement. So that's why last Friday you and I were supposed to record, and I couldn't because I was down in the basement with my wet dry vac. I got up probably 15, 20 gallons by myself before I was able to call Service Master and have them come and do an emergency. And it's just been a week of trying. The church building has been so humid and trying to dry this thing out. And anyway, it has been a weird week of being alone, trying to finish a paint job before my staff gets back for August, dealing with my own religious trauma, planning a memorial service, and trying to dry out the flood in the basement. It has been a bizarre week, man.
Yeah, that counts as bizarre.
That's a lot going on.
And the flooding, man, that flooding is no fun.
No.
Last year where we had a flood and our whole downstairs flooded. The fixing a flood problem. Yours you just have to get rid of your chicken.
Yeah.
Or your turkey.
Yeah.
But ours required like 4 or 5 weeks of ripping up stuff.
No.
And it was so long.
Oh man.
And now one of the bathrooms upstairs, the water is just not working, and now I'm like, we're about to like have to redo bathrooms. And the real thing I'm worried is that we're gonna have 5 people sharing one bathroom. Until
that's a lot.
Fixed.
That's a lot of people.
I'm
in
like,
one bathroom.
You can't have bathrooms break right when all of the new student loan expectations arrive. This is really Donald Trump is gonna cost me like an extra 20 grand this year, and I'm not happy about it.
Wow.
But anyway, I was just waiting for all those tax cuts, and then they don't exist.
On a shallow side,
student loan bill.
Yeah.
That's
on a shallow side note,
constipated.
No. I was too lazy to make fresh coffee this morning here at the office, and so I heated up day-old coffee, and I don't know if it oxidated overnight, but it has taken on a very strange flavor of gunpowder.
Oh.
So
that's not ideal.
Yeah. I feel like I have like aftertaste. After you shoot like a shotgun and there's the sulfury sort of black powder. I have that as the aftertaste right now in my mouth. So that's not that pleasant.
Well, you know what else isn't pleasant?
Uh-oh. There's your
Jeffrey
sticky note?
Epstein in Palestine.
Yeah, what's going on with this sticky note?
Okay, so you know how I hang out with normal people at the cigar lounge.
Oh, okay.
That's where I can hang out with people that don't have graduate degrees and are working class Southern people.
Oh.
And cigar lounge also is very multiracial, so they have to like self-edit to say the thing, not say the thing.
That's true.
I will go
Yeah.
Okay, same. Like I'm half the time finishing work, and then as more people get off work that are like construction workers, which ends, early afternoon in the summer because you start early to end at 2 or 3 because once
hot.
it's 90 and 90, like the humidity's up and stuff, nobody needs to be outside. So
no one needs that.
You got people who have been working the day coming in, so it's like when it gets to second cigar time, now you're hanging. In this, over the course of this cigar, I sat and listened to two groups of people that I could not, like, they don't agree on anything, but all of a sudden they agreed on something both. So one group, and you can guess who they love the most in their life other than their mama, is just railing about Jeffrey Epstein stuff.
Yeah.
And they clearly listen to podcasts about it while working because they're like, we already know they said this and this. They're going through like it was brutal. And I was like, I thought you liked Donald Trump. And one of the guy goes, he's duped all of us. If you know, like he goes, these numbers aren't right because I was not. I'm just telling the experience of the story. He's like, there are 140 some thousand sexual assaults to kids in a year, and our investigation rate is in the single digits, and we have the most prolific sexual predator in jail, and he supposedly kills himself, and now his accomplice he's going to pardon just to get out and cover up his lying, blah 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 blah. And he just goes into this whole thing, right? And I don't spend a lot of time searching up conspiracy theories, so I can't tell you if he's a Mossad agent. And then now both parties, he's got this whole thing. But then he says, how am I supposed to trust someone who doesn't care about the kids? Same conversation a little bit later. Young site manager, African-American guy. He goes to one of the progressive Black Baptist churches in town. He calls me Reverend just because he knows that irritates me in front of other people. And he goes in about Palestine. And I mean, listing off just like now everyone else in the world knows they're starving people. They're doing it deliberately. Now, and a whole bunch of Democrats think we don't know how to use Google Translate and put what all these people are saying in Hebrew. The people in the like the chief of staff and all that kind of stuff saying Hebrew and look at it in English. And he just starts going. And he ends by saying something. In the heads of Democrats expect people to trust them when they can't tell what's right or wrong when it comes to starving children and paying for the bombs of the people that do it. And I realized, like, this past week there's this survey, of like trusted institutions and stuff, and the Democrats are even worse than Republicans, and Trump's got the worst presidential ranking he's had, prior to COVID. And I was sitting there, I was like, what you heard out of essentially populist members of both parties' mouths is, how do they expect me to trust them if something that's just like bare minimal decency they don't care about or even posture towards, right? So like, you expect me not to care anymore about kitty touchers or starving children. And it made me think that, like, part of what is going on, or like my post-it pad was, what's the family resemblance between both of those experiences? And what does it say about the public square, right?
Mm-hmm.
That people in both parties are looking at just basic ethical things in front of them and not going, oh, this is something I have a different opinion on, but something like, how do you expect me to trust you to represent me and do the right thing anywhere
Yeah.
if you can do this?
Oh, man.
And I had never thought about connecting those two.
Nope.
I had this experience, wrote it on my post-it yesterday. Adam Clark. You met him at camp. We talked about it for like an hour and a half because I was like, what do you think about this? And he's like, starts going back and he had a, similar experiences where, this, what people use this kind of like example of why you don't trust the decision making thing in general. But if you have large portions of people that even feel like they could belong to a political party going, I got nothing. If you can't figure this one out, then what's wrong with you? And it means the incentive structure collectively is so bad that your most loyal voter looks at you and goes, but you are a sick son of a,
Wow.
That's how the redneck said it.
Wow. There are so many threads in this tapestry going on right now. So I'm just going to pull at a couple of them. All right. The first is the deep mistrust of institutional authority and knowledge is a cultural phenomenon, right? But it is inflamed so mightily right now, not just by the current administration, but by this scandal. It really is like, I'm going to say shocking. I texted my buddies 2 weeks ago and said, wouldn't it be weird if this controversy, this conspiracy, is what finally breaks apart the MAGA coalition? Like, because the second thread I want to pull on is we also have in this culture the reification of the nuclear family and the prioritization of children is so romanticized in our present religious and cultural environment that it is the one thing, like, as somebody who doesn't have their own children but has been in youth ministry, I've watched this phenomenon, but this thing is configured in a way that the exact people who normally would say back the current administration, there's something else between their support that they hold even more valuable, and that's children. And the fact that this involves minors, and then you add the sexuality component to it of right, and for this group, conservative or evangelical fundamentalist Christians, the repressive nature of sexuality and the shame-based culture, like, there's a lot going on in this one story that won't die. In fact, seems to be picking up momentum. It is, I mean, if it wasn't so horrific, it would be fascinating to watch, right? And then you go to their support of Israel, right? Because the evangelical way of reading eschatology and soteriology is the salvation of Israel and the Zionist priority. But the one thing, again, that might cause them something to come between them and support is children. And when you have 20,000 children, like one per day, dying of starvation, not including violence and bombing and so many other things, it wouldn't it be, I mean, it's sort of grotesque, but at the same time fascinating to see how the prioritization of children might actually come between the base and both the administration and the support of the Zionist. I mean, I don't even know how to wrap my brain around how weird the news is right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure that wrapping around the news and making sense is a difficult task.
No, and
And
it changes daily,
yeah,
hourly, as new stuff comes out.
But see, I
And
think that's the element about that conversation at the cigar shop that really struck me is, you know, it is not abnormal for a citizen that's not in the know for decision making to think, I can't get my brain around this situation, right? And that's why you wanted Caesar to be good, or the president to be good, or like our entire form of government was like a remedy to that problem with the communication challenges and power sharing challenges you had when you wrote letters and had to ride horses, right? And I think now the amount of stuff um, the amount of information you get, just like pictures of starving uh, Palestinian kids, or Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein hanging out repeatedly, and videos of them talking about each other, and then to either one of them be like, "That you didn't see that," and you're like, "Well, was it a fake?" "Oh no, it's not fake." Well, if by that you mean the editing of the footage from the prison and not doing a good job covering up the metadata, like there's this whole sense that um, yes, we can't wrap our heads around it. But the world got more complicated. We had to move from having one or two people in charge. Oh, we need a whole subcommittee that gets to know AI and how you regulate it. And then these that are working on healthcare stuff. And this is on roads, right? And now we don't trust any of those people because they're all playing games. So like that moral response of just like whatever basic decencies required for me to trust a system where you're supposed to know and have your brain around parts of it and work with these other people that have it around, it can't work because point at these kids, whether they're assault victims of sexual assault or starving, or think of all the people dying in Africa because we pulled funding and they aren't just eating food that's rotting and being burned. Like there's a uh, yes, our knowledge of what's happening I think has helped make it reach critical mass for people to have that response. But I don't know. I'm kind of glad it's happening where people in both parties feel completely disgusted by their own, because whatever those family resemblances are, where like this is what doing our job looks like, means that the majority of people in both parties look at you and go, like, look, I know I can't know everything, but I need to know that if I did, like, you would be wanting to choose one of the good answers.
Yeah.
Maybe not the best, right? Like I could, like I've had, after my sheer anger over Iraq and stuff, post 9/11, when I was first learning loving kindness meditation, uh, like I used Colin Powell as someone that like I practiced praying because I was so mad about him lying at the UN, and then you find out like he was lied to, and then there's all these systems of it, and everyone had these expectations, and it all kind of sets up the more you know the history. And so like that activity of praying in a way of cultivating care for someone, and then it got to the point where I'm like, well, if you trusted that everyone was doing their job and was told X, Y, and Z, then you're doing your job, even if it turns out you're lying. And that's like a breakdown of the system, right? And that was when I was like, the idea to ever vote for Republican again after friends died in Iraq and Afghanistan, which in the South, there's plenty of your friends that are in the military.
Yeah.
I'm just like, no. And now I can kind of see that happening. And I just feel like the positive part about that is it gives you a connection point that happened in that conversation where people in the room who tend to think, but don't talk about it there, that the other tribe is just morally broken. You had like a solidarity form of everyone in the room was like, no, this thing is effed up, right? Yeah. And no one had, like, I might not think there's a long deep state something or another that involved like a
Yep.
lot of money
That's what I was just going to
and
say.
Israel or whatever. Like,
Yep.
but he does. That's his team, and
Yep.
but I do understand the feeling, and just that we can't even trust you when
Yep.
we're not looking
Yep.
is could really set something new up, I think.
So I was going to say, Trip, this might seem like a curveball, but now that you've introduced it, it's not going to. This is going to seem like a heater right down the middle. This is where that's sports ball. The thing I might be the most intrigued by in all of this crappy crisis is so in my field of practical theology, it's part theology, but it's part sociology, right? Like we use case studies and qualitative methods and things like that, ethnographies. The part of me that's a sociologist, the thing that I'm most intrigued by, even though it's in the midst of this bizarre and horrific set of stories, is my interaction with evangelicals and conservative Christians over the last 15, 20 years has proven to me that they do not have the capacity to think outside of the individual and the internal, right? Like they cannot accept or subscribe to what we would call systemic issues, like systemic racism, right?
Yeah.
They can't do it. They're because the gospel that they've been conditioned in is so individualistic and so personal. And there's an upside to that, right? Because God is very near, Jesus is very close, right? And it's about personal piety, and there are some upsides, but the downside is the inability to think in larger structures like systemic racism. Here's the thing. While the conspiracy theory element is very concerning and even discouraging, it is the closest thing to systemic thinking I have heard from them. And the way that they're talking about the deep state and dark money, and I'm like, while I don't subscribe to the conspiracy that you're doing, the framework, right? The rubric that you're utilizing and the larger thought structure is the closest thing that I have heard you say to the thing that I'm trying to address. Like you're starting to see that that's not just the individuals, because you have an individual, let's say like Trump, who's anti-establishment, but then gets elected and becomes the establishment. And then you don't trust them. Why? Because they're part of something you don't trust. And it's like you and I, this is a horseshoe thing. We're starting to come around to the point where we're not that far apart.
That's really fascinating. Yeah. and you're like, let me tell you about another deep state cabal.
Yeah, because if you have an individual,
Consumerism.
right, if you have an individual who becomes a part of a system, a structure, or an institution that has built into it something concerning, whether that individual is personally that way, right? Or even, right, if you have let's say a police officer of color, but they're a part of something that is embedded with and inherently racist in its structure, right? And its history, its DNA. It doesn't matter if the cop herself is not racist or if the young man is, Puerto Rican or Latino or African American. Once they're a part of a racist system, they become complicit, right, in holding up the structures and the principles and the priorities of that thing. And so in the same way that Trump now is in the authority and now is complicit with the cover-up structure, right, of the deep state and is no longer trustworthy, you're like, this is sounding similar to that thing 10 years ago when I first started talking to you about critical race theory you didn't like very much.
Well, I can't remember what part I didn't like very much at what point, Bo.
Well, if you think
now I'm sitting here trying to guess, but
no, Hey, here's an interesting side note. It's travel season. A lot of people are traveling during the summer. And in the past month, I've had 3 different friends or former students take me out to lunch, stop by in Twin Falls. They happen to be passing through. And
Were
I've been
they
able
jumping
to.
off that bridge? Or that bridge you can jump off of?
No, no one's base jumping yet.
Oh, I feel like that. Didn't you say like that's like the thing it's known
It
for?
is. Yeah.
You should have a setup and just if someone comes to have lunch with you, you're like, you want to do the plunge, and then they'll
Man,
just.
could you bring yourself to jump 486 feet even with a parachute? Could you do it? I don't know that my
I
body
think
could.
I would watch other people do it.
Oh yeah, that's
I probably wouldn't
yeah.
get close to the edge. Do you?
It's a long
I
way down, man.
you know those places where they have like the clear floor and you're over the top of stuff. I can't do that.
No.
Oh, I at the um, Grand Canyon. There was that restaurant in LA where there's like a clear slide and you kind of go from like you go down 3 stories of it, but it's just clear, like it's clear plexiglass. You're sliding and you just see the streets way down below. I I went there and youth are doing it and they're like it's just gonna be so fun and I'm like nah, I'm gonna go
I'll,
catch.
I'll wait for you at the bottom.
I can't even that not the San Francisco Bay Bridge, but the other bridge that's like metal grate, so you can see underneath it. I can't do that bridge.
Yeah.
When
There's one
Greg
like
and
that.
I were
There's one
driving
like
up
that in
there,
Portland. I couldn't bike across.
oh, you can see everything underneath it, and just the traffic waiting to get in line. And I'm like realizing we're going to be sitting on this bridge. We were driving up to Wild Goose West, and I told Greg Stevens, I'm like, we're gonna switch, and I'm like, he's like, why? It's like I can't go over that bridge. I can't be looking down. I'm gonna lay the seat down and cover my eyes till we're off. And he thought I was joking, and I'm like, no.
I'm
And
pulling over.
I'm like, I don't want to get out of line, so we're just gonna crawl over each other. And I just laid there, and I don't know. I know it's not rational, but just the moment I'm on a bridge, if I'm driving over water on a bridge, even if it's a real bridge, in Scotland, we had to do it all the time. If we went anywhere, like my whole family knows, Dad's turning the volume up, singing along, and staring at the road right in front of him. Don't talk to him.
Tunnel vision.
I just think, what happens if this is the first time in my life I have a giant arm spasm? And now my whole family's flying off a bridge, and I'm like, this is ridiculous, Trip. And you're in the middle lane. You'd have to go through multiple cars. Like, you're not, it's just going to be a wreck. And I'm like, a wreck where I have to sit on the side of the road on a bridge over water. And no. Oh,
hey, one last reflection on your story, your sticky note story. When I was back after my dad passed, I was back in New York cleaning out his offices and trying to get his house ready for the market. He smoked cigars, and so some of his cigar buddies from time to time would invite me to join them at the cigar lounge. That cigar lounge was a fascinating study in who is available in the middle of the day. So not only was it the most racially diverse room I have been in a very long time, which was in itself fascinating. The conversations that you overheard were also people who were politically conservative, but often socially progressive. And so the conversations were really amazing because for people to be available in the middle of the day, say from noon to 2, they're often self-employed or entrepreneurial at some level. So they have enough money to buy, premium cigars, but they also have the flexibility in their schedule to be there. Then, like you said, after about 3, the blue collar people started rolling in. Now, they have expendable income because they get paid amazing amazing wages, like plumbers and
school teachers
electricians.
come in there too around that time. Like,
oh, really? Okay.
Teachers that get out, like, they're great. Like, because no one wants to argue with a school teacher because they just feel bad even when they disagree.
Ouch. But sitting in that cigar lounge, and it happened, I was there, I think, 3 times in a 2-week period, was so interesting as far as both demographics and politics overlapping in a place. And you just think, this is the modern day salon. This is where people come to meet and exchange ideas. And it was just, it was very cool to be in there. And if you don't go to places like that, you may have a conception of like what it would be like in there, but it's pretty wild intersection of people.
Yeah, the one of the funniest things, like when I would tell stories about that, especially at academic events, I'm like, you know how when you're hanging out with all the other humanities professors, the only thing everyone knows they have in common is a queer child, a New York Times subscription, and some membership at an art museum somewhere, and they'll all be like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
I was like, well, it's a cigar lounge. It's the fact that you like smoking cigars, and you just happen to be free at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and they probably all listen to the Joe Rogan podcast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if you smoke cigars, you're used to having an hour and a half where you relax, and if there's no one to talk to you, you listen to long form podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you're ever looking for podcast recommendations, or you're trying to identify what psychograph the person you're talking to at a cigar store, if they're sitting in the lounge, they high likelihood they listen to podcasts. You ask like, well, what are some of your favorite podcasts? Now you know who you're talking to, and you can decide like just to go for topics, right? So if it's like the redneck guys, the construction work, get in at 3, and I know they're like big Rogan heads, then we're just going to talk about kettlebells and Star Wars, and they're going to be like, this is great. They find out that they're like, oh, what did you do in Edinburgh? Oh, science and religion. Have you heard about? Do you know about NDEs, near death experiences? And I'm like, oh, I had a lecture on it. Then they're like, this is great, and I'm like, just don't Google me. I'm just waiting for but yeah, that's the trick, is you ask them what podcasts they listen to, and then then you can find out, because like unless they're like 70 or above, in all likelihood they do. And when you're picking your cigar lounge locally, just like when you're picking your comic book store, you don't want ones that have live TV on. Or if you're picking your favorite pub or your coffee shop, like when live TV's on, there's always things that make the easiest conversation something like in the news or something, or you're going to fight over the remote as to which news channel or all that. But if you just don't have it as an option, then it's great. Unless, like Select Beer, my favorite, my beer place in Redondo that you've gone with me a number of times.
Yeah.
They may have a TV they pull out on Kershaw Day, or if it's a Lakers playoff game. You can have one when it's like the team of the city comes out, right? Okay, well, if it's Dodgers or Lakers, you can show it, but otherwise, no screens, unless it's just what's on tap. But that's just generally true. That's my experience on all my third places, be it tap rooms, cigar lounges, coffee shops, bookstores, anything like that.
Yeah.
You meet more people faster. No live TV.
Yeah. That's really interesting. By the way, I think I have fixed my problem of meeting new people. So I've been experimenting, and it turns out. So here's how because of the conversation. If anybody remembers me belly aching a couple months ago, the conversation always goes the exact same way, and it's the same 4 questions over and over again. But the summer has provided me the opportunity to change that up a little bit. So when people ask where I'm from, I say Twin. Now, even though I've only been here for 2 years, I say Twin because what they mean is you're not visiting from California or Oregon or Texas, right? So I say I'm from here. And that gives me it changes the menu. So instead of people saying, where'd you come from? So
it like
then
in their like framework thing, once you say Twin, they're like, okay, local. Now I'm parsing where he is locally, not where he came from.
And then the second question is always, what do you do? And I've been experimenting, and my new favorite answer is I actually do a bunch of different things. But my favorite one is I work for a nonprofit downtown that helps feed hungry people and clothe and help people in need. Because I'm on the board of Everybody House, which used to be a part of this church, but now is its own 501c3. And so I say, at the Methodist Church downtown, there's a bunch of nonprofits that all like utilize the building. And so by not saying I'm a minister or not employed by the church, it opens up a totally different set of conversations that I'm enjoying very much.
Oh, I bet.
Isn't that good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, somebody may
tried
say,
Baptist Evangelist yet?
My dad used to, if he didn't want to talk to somebody chatty on a plane, he would tell him he was an evangelist.
I know, he told me that, and I've used it ever since. Like if you say professor, then they're going to ask, and then you go like philosophy, religion, and science. Then they're going to talk to you because they're bound to have a topic they can talk to you about. If you're like clergy, they're going to give you whatever the clergy thing is. But if you go, oh, I'm a Baptist evangelist.
Yeah.
Oh, good work. You got 30 seconds before they weren't ready to mutually nap.
Yeah.
And
hey, Michael E wants to know if people can ask questions. Now, we already have 47 questions that have been sent in.
And we're waiting till the 47-minute mark to start answering any of them.
Is that all right? Let's talk. Let me say something about these questions. Trip, were you blown away by not just how many questions were sent in, but the quality of them? Did that take you back at all?
Yeah. I was like, huh. That's a lot of questions.
Yeah, and honestly, I realized that our listenership, they're not your average run-of-the-mill podcast listeners. The fact that it's called a Theology Nerd Throwdown means we have a very specific caliber of people who are even interested in this niche conversation.
Yeah. And Bo, I didn't put on the ones I sent you the random life questions. Like, because we should just save them all and do it one time. But because I was like, it was kind of funny. Like some of them were like life advice questions or what are your favorites or whatever. And,
can you imagine?
And so I feel like we should save life advice ones and do an episode that just says slightly above average answers to life's biggest questions.
That is hilarious.
And somebody went on a Reddit page called "Am I an Asshole?" Like, that's the Reddit page where people like put a story up and they're like, "Was I the asshole?"
Oh, is it me?
Story?
Yeah.
They were like, I found a number of these that we could really use your definitive assessment on. And I just thought, okay, that's a funny show idea. These are all the more serious.
That is a funny show idea. Yeah.
And because here's the question: how much of a a-hole would someone have to be for Bo to publicly say they're one? So you could be conflicted, or maybe we have to give them like a a-hole rating. That's like a 1-star or a 5-star or something like that. Because you don't want to just ontologically decide someone's status as whether or not they're like chocolate Cheerio status or not.
Trip, I got to hang out with somebody last week who was being an a-hole.
It wasn't me because you canceled on me for the before.
That's right.
So I'm good.
That's right. And it took me, it was like a 3-hour encounter. And it took me till about 2 hours, 45 minutes before I had to say, okay, listen, dude. And I actually got to the point where I was like, there's a problem here. So I have a very long fuse. But in the days since that encounter, I've been thinking, my father, one of his ministries that he said was like one of his primary things was to tell people training for ministry to stop being wieners. Like, you're being a weenie, stop it, knock it off. And I sort of got it sitting in that place with this person. Like, yeah, I think sometimes you just have to be willing to make the conversation uncomfortable and say, hey, I have some concerns here. So it put me in a very uncomfortable and unpracticed place.
Well, then we might have to try that. It made me think that there's bound to be Reddit pages with questions about all sorts of stuff that would be funny to take them seriously and answer them on the internet. So, all right,
let's go.
So, we put these. I sent him the bow, and he told me what order to put things in. So,
all right,
we'll see.
Are we going to do 5 to 8 first? Okay,
yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah. All right. So nearly 60% of Americans now identify as religiously unaffiliated, the fastest growing religious category. Are these people actually becoming less spiritual or just rejecting institutions?
In my experience in LA, Portland, and now Southern Idaho, they are becoming less spiritual. There's an actual rejection of the religious categories, like whether that's ontological, epistemological, metaphysical, ethical. There is a rejection categorically for, I would say, the large majority of people who have moved in this direction. It's not just an institutional rejection. It is actually a transformation of their entire conception of life and participation in community and belief systems and everything. It is the rare person I find who holds on to some form of spirituality, or who, what Paul Ricoeur would call, comes into a second naivete and either, lovingly deconstructs their previous understanding in a way that allows them to continue to participate in some spirituality, or is even hungry for it. It really is an abandonment of, whether you call it the deeper life. I mean, most people I know, they move to just being physicalists or humanists or taking on like an evolutionary psychology perspective and explanation of everything. In my experience, they are not holding on to a spirituality nearly of any kind, unless it's sort of a meditative centering practice thing. But that also can be psychological and not spiritual. So that's, from my limited experience, they're really walking away and not even taking the hymnal with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I kind of feel like there are two different parts of this. So one, and by the way, at 3:00, Ryan Burge and I are doing a live stream on here for everyone that's a member of the Substack, with all the new data from their big study of the religious nuns. So he may actually have real answers to some of these questions based on the most new data. But one of the things that showed up, they haven't published all the research yet. It's a big project Ryan Burge and Tony Jones did with this big Templeton grant, the largest survey, and then they've created a typology of kind of spiritual forms of life for the nuns.
Wow.
So it kind of varies, and there are reasons anyway. But I think the becoming less spiritual is just a feature of modern life that includes people that are religious and not religious. That the form of life we have, the kind of accelerating intensity of modernity, market incentives, speed of change at culture and technology, and all those things kind of play into both an increasingly untethered self-narrative and such, and the occupation of one's attention and one's orientation towards things that are thoroughly immanentist, and be it possessions, power, prestige, those kind of things. So like, and that's true about people in our congregations and people that are very religious in form. The amount of our time and attention and the way we orient ourselves, being grounded in these larger in larger spiritual ways is like that is impacting everyone. And then we also have the ongoing rejection of institutions, which is a feature. Like even successful church plants are like, we don't tell them what denomination we go to, or so they're like the less spiritual and rejecting institutions are cultural statements that lead right to people that are less spiritual and not institutionally tethered. And some of them do religious or spiritual things in their kind of bricolage approach, or they manifest stuff, or there's all these kind of individual ways one does it. But I think part of any spiritual and religious tradition until relatively recently are that those are communal endeavors that happen in collectives. And when in the rejection of institutions comes a kind of detethering from major narratives of the wisdom traditions, structure of the year, rituals of passage, all those kind of things. And so, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of features that are there, but yeah, and then it kind of depends on what you mean by spiritual. But
my favorite vocabulary word when talking about this is delaminate. So when things that have been traditionally pressed together and glued together no longer hold together and they separate, there's a delaminating that happens where different parts of life go in very different directions. There's a feathering that happens when, like, if you were to get a press board counter top like really wet, and it would pull apart and the glue no longer binds. So it's an unbinding and untethering, a feathering of priorities. And people may not even honestly be looking to integrate them into a holistic sort of worldview. It's just a compartmentalization of life that you have. This is the way you participate in the economy. This is the way you participate in entertainment. And the partitioning and bracketing of spirituality or religious practice is so far off to the side that it's nearly irrelevant.
Yeah. All right. So Bo grouped a bunch of them that are all around this theme. So we might say less on some of these.
Okay.
Who knows? What's behind the massive growth in people calling themselves spiritual but not religious? Is this authentic spiritual seeking or spiritual consumerism?
So I'm not saying this from a clergy position. I'm saying this as a researcher and academic theologian. This is happening within the context of late capitalism, right? Consumer culture to the extreme, and especially inside post-COVID, when we were trapped in our houses and we were all ordering off Amazon, and that those trends have continued, the isolation and the consumerism, retail therapy. I truly am comfortable saying that it is spiritual consumerism. That because you can go, to use the old analogy, you can go to Starbucks and you tell them how you want your coffee. You want a half calf and this temperature, right? That is now how people approach their spirituality. And they say, well, I want this in a church and I want this out of my, how it relates to politics and this right during the week. And as consumers, it is, whether you call it a cafeteria style Christianity, it used to get called. I was like, the Golden Corral, like that you're in charge, though. I really do think that it's based in consumerism.
Yeah. No, I get that. A few months back when we talked about my kind of Lenten experience of not doing social media, like one of the things that I thought about during that period and wrote about in the audio essay that we talked about here is that difference between contemplation and fascination. And I think a lot of if you were just, if you had a pie chart of that little bit of time that would have qualified as contemplation for Trip, and what part is fascination of how I use my attention in a day. Like the impact of COVID was just like fascination just ate more of the contemplation space, and how you hold attention, and that form of attention gives some of, it's like the empty calorie version of what larger spiritual seeking gives. But then like once you kind of get used to it, sometimes you just want more crap, and to be fascinated for a bit versus, look for something more. But then again, that dynamic is something that's impacting people that are religious or not. But then but spiritual but not religious, I think oftentimes like functions as a way of saying like, well, I'm still down for big conversations. I don't think any of humanity's wisdom traditions that have evolved to serve and develop thriving over its history have anything to contribute to my journey right now. Like it involves a kind of privileging of the self's perspective and interpretation that is problematized by the anthropology of religions.
And I'll just say, in a society that is plagued by binge watching, doom scrolling, echo chambers on our social media, retail therapy, and the prioritization of the individual,
all those good things.
We are not set up to combat or even compete with the availability of the technology to bring self-satisfaction and endorphins and dopamine hits to the individual, because the thing that we're doing is a long, steady investment it's just we're not set up to compete with or combat the availability, the immediate satisfaction and availability of consumerism.
All right. Next question was, young people are abandoning religion at unprecedented rates. Is this just typical youthful rebellion or something fundamentally different this time? I think this is a quick one. It's fundamentally different this time.
It's fundamentally different. It is unprecedented. Ever since the Woodstock, the Cultural Revolution, civil rights, feminist revolution, technological advancements, it is a steady train in one direction, but it has crested a hill. We have crossed over a threshold, and there is a watershed abandonment of institutional religion and even, I would say, traditional spirituality.
I'm going to guess the next questioner had something similar in mind. Will millennials and Gen Z return to organized religion as they age and have families like the previous generations did?
No, and I don't.
Optimistic.
Yeah, no, and I don't know why. Here, I can tell you in a mainline context.
And I don't know why. And that's not a Methodist minister talking. That is a local nonprofit organizer that wants to help his neighbors. He wants you to be his friend now.
Listen, I know in previous eras and decades that when people in their 20s and 30s started having kids, they would bring them back to Sunday school to have them taught the lessons of faith and the structures. That is not happening. And I truly am growing suspicious the longer that I'm ministering in mainline context that the way we did spirituality from the 50s, 60s, 70s up was so milquetoast, impotent, non-life-giving that generation, post-boomers, who are now having Gen Z and millennials, it was so unsatisfying and unfruitful in their life that there is no appeal there, right? It's not compelling at any level. And then, as you point out, Trip, when we have alternative age-based things for kids, and then when they graduate, from confirmation or from high school, and then they have to come into the adult service, they have no frame of reference for it. and no familiarity with it, and there's nothing compelling about it. And now they're just dumped into this boring Sunday morning service that they have no frame of reference for. So they stop coming. And then they get involved in other things like rock climbing and soccer practice on Sunday mornings. And there is no reason to think this trend will turn around.
And that is Optimism Corner, sponsored by Bo Sanders.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Okay. I will say one thing on that. I don't know if you've had this, but in talking with your former youth, right, who not like ones that were like tag-alongs or whatever, but like the most committed youth, it's amazing. The two things that show up talking to them is one, okay, well, I moved so and so. There's like literally no church like ours here. And like the one that has no one within 20 years my age at it.
Right.
Or they for 10 years after college, they work in ways that don't really allow you to participate on Sunday mornings because you're a single adult whose work schedule is controlled by someone else, and you might be out Saturday night or something. So some of it's just that, like they aren't already in a family with a house and stuff. So the timeline is different, which could make someone think, oh, maybe they'll come back. It's just, what are they going back to? But then the other part was, I've had youth go that spent like real effort, like email me and I introduce them to clergy in their area and stuff. And they're like, do you know how shallow most relationships are at church? They're nothing like youth group. And as both of us have had experience, when you come from a more evangelical context, then find the theology and justice stuff of mainline so attractive, and then you become a youth minister, you're bringing in like the kind of deep personal commitment and piety stuff and the community building things that are important to you that just don't exist in the main church.
Wow.
Life. And so then they go to even, say, our own denomination churches. The worship service and content may be fine, but they're like, when do you have like friends that are like show up on your worst day, or how long do you have to be here before you're included in the family, this kind of thing. And as someone that was married at 20, I don't know what it would be like to be 29, single female, showing up at a church, or a 32-year-old guy and going, these kind of things where they talk to me and I'm like, oh no. Because even like my Sunday school group that are the young adults, not like youth, but like 25 to 40-year-olds, everyone in it is married, and there's plenty of new members and stuff, but they're like young couples about to have kids or whatever, and they're almost all people who came to this church because they're more ethically or justice centered, and this was the closest to their upbringing, but they aren't embarrassed about. But it wasn't like they were looking for it till they were married or had their first kid or found out they're pregnant, right? And just facilitating that group and listening to people's stories, it like, they're going back, but they're not like going back like they were mainline Protestants. They're evangelicals who like gay people or care about the planet, and they're like, this is the closest I could get. And they wanted this group because they're there's 500 people there in worship, but there's 40 of them that are with it near their generation. And they're like, when do we ever become friends with each other?
I'm so glad you brought up. I had meant to touch on the economic thing. It's a real situation with wage structures the way they are. So I would say, even for our young people, a third of them, Sunday's their only day off, right? So they'll hang out with friends and party on Saturday night. So they're not getting up early Sunday morning. And if they do, that's their one day to go out to the lake or go rock climbing or do the thing that they want to do, go for a ride. And so the priority of coming to church and being a part of something like this is way, way lower, or they have to work Sunday morning because of the nature of the kinds of jobs that they can get. The economics for people in their 20s, 30s, 40s doesn't lend itself very well to participating in spiritual community if that's primarily on Sunday morning.
Yep.
Or actually, even during the week, it's just it doesn't work.
Lori in the chat, who she moved over to YouTube because there's like over 100 people on Substack, but their comments don't pop up here. So I'm watching the Substack one.
Oh,
I just realized that. So if you're on Substack and have questions, I can now see that. But because there's like 50 or so people on YouTube, but over 100 on Substack right now. And she switched over. Now I saw her comment, and I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, not all seminaries tend to pastoral training. I will say my experience that at Wake Forest, they have a thing called the Art of Ministry program, was spectacular. But which I found out, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, I found out now all incoming students don't pay. They got full tuition scholarship for every MDiv student.
Out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you know someone's considering ministry, I know like their program is fully funded, and the ministry program is still ran by Jill Crenshaw, who it was beautiful. It's integrated through all 3 years because most students are full time, and so it's called Art of Ministry. So every semester you're with everyone from your grade, and then so it's like cumulative and not kind of like anyway. But yeah, it's I don't really know how the ministry classes work at any of the other schools I taught at because I just taught my classes, and I did have a couple students who are clergy in my classes at Luther that did amazing work on like the religion and pop culture stuff for their congregation. So you know, they had to think about it. They had to be thinking about how do I do this in a congregation with tools they gained elsewhere, because that wasn't what I was talking about. The projects are cool.
Well, listen, man, I didn't know we were going to talk about seminaries, but can I just say a great frustration that I'm experiencing right now? I have a young person who getting ready to get married and feels a call to ministry, is a farmer, right? So that's land-based. But in order to train for ministry is going to move to North Carolina, right, to go to Duke. And then if they become United Methodist, then they're going to move every 4 or 5 years, right, in the appointment system. So this is a person who is integrated into the land and has ecology and theology as a major focus, who now has
to work with Norman, which at Duke, Norman Worspa.
Yeah.
That's so
but
cool.
Now has to transplant to a residential seminary and then become a part of a system that will move them around and keep them from putting down roots and seeing a tree come to fruit. Right? It's the dumbest antiquated system. Right?
I understand. Though you should make sure you introduce us when he moves out here. So.
Oh no, I've already sent him. I sent him your stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You argue we're living in a post-religious age, but 70% of Americans still identify as religious. What exactly do you mean by this term?
This is you.
Yeah, I assume so. Well, it's a Paul Ricoeur line. Where
don't you try and rope me into this?
No, it's a quote of his that I used at some point. But in the larger quote, what he's talking about, a post-religious age, is unlike most of church history, where everyone's like, oh, we believe in God, and now we have a shared religion around where you live and this kind of thing. Now, like, the age isn't religious; it's now a task for the individual, and the individual is both a believer and a skeptic. And so you, like, once you internalize false consciousness that you might not be transparent to why you even believe, do, and say what it is, then the status of faith functions differently, right? And so, the 70% of Americans, like, when you identify as something, right? Most of church history, you wouldn't ask someone, well, how do you identify religiously? You'd be like, well, I'm in Italy, so I'm Catholic. So that's what his point is that the task or burden of religious identity has now been so pushed to the individual It's now a task you have and not something you kind of receive from the collective or community, which connects to the next question.
Oh, before you go there,
Oh,
Trip,
yeah.
does Dan Stiver ever come to live events?
He came to Theology Beer Camp
Damn
2 or
it.
3 years ago.
Can you get him back?
Well, not this year, but
Okay,
I
next.
mean, he's always more than welcome to come. But
Let's do it. Let me tell you why. I
but
had
I love
loaned
Dan Stiver.
his book, Theology After Ricoeur, to a friend of mine a long, long time ago and had lost track of it. And when they came through town and we had lunch, they returned it to me. And I had forgotten. It is my most highlighted book. I have never highlighted a book more than that. In fact, my highlights are in 3 different colors, which means I read it 3 different times. And there are notes written in the margins. I think I interacted with that book more than any other book I've ever had. And I forgot that until it was returned to me. And I was like, I'd love to meet Dan Stiver.
Yeah, I think you should look at the book, and then we just get him to join us.
Oh,
and we just talk about Paul Ricoeur, because
I love it.
a
Dude.
long time ago, I did this series of for the homebrewed members, right when the you could sign up to be a deacon or whatever. Sometime in that first year, maybe it was the second year. Yeah, the first year, Phil Clayton and I did epic reads where it was like the books after
I remember
PhD
that.
I wanted to read.
Yeah.
So we read
Yeah.
The Republic and City of God,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Oh, okay. All right.
But then I did one on all the philosophers that have had the biggest impact on me, and I got different people to do intro lectures, and he did the intro lecture to Paul Ricoeur.
Oh my gosh!
And but
was this 2016?
Maybe
I think it was 2016 because I had just moved up to Portland.
Probably because I was trying to figure out something to do if you aren't asking questions. I was like, I need someone to write some blog posts, get people worked up on the internet, so that then Bo can get me worked up, and then he has to dial it back and make it sensible.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, go back to your question. Put that thing back up on the screen.
Okay, so Charles Taylor talks about moving from a world where believing in God was unavoidable to one where it's just one option among others. How does a choice-based approach change the nature of faith itself?
So this is the question that I meant to use the cafeteria Christianity and the barista approach to faith. This is where I meant to say that. It's when you center the individual and prioritize their agency in self-selecting, it changes religious commitment in such fundamental ways. It's not just different in degree, it's different in kind.
Yeah. And one of the other elements about this that I think at least it's been helpful to me in understanding it is looking at just how the nature of the belief faith relationships change through church history. So for most of church history, the majority of Christians didn't even know what was happening in worship because they didn't know Latin, right? So
it's unbelievable.
And so then do you have faith is more like, do you trust this tradition? Right? And you think of, Karen Armstrong's whole bit on when she was talking about the creed's not like, here's a list of things I believe. It's a description of the one in whom you trust. And then in the Middle Ages, there's this transition when the advent of scholasticism became dominant. You start having these theological arguments that you go, okay, well, now we've got more clarity on these doctrines, but no one really understands it. So the concept of implicit belief emerges in the medieval period, where they are supposed to trust a triune God, but you can't ask a layperson how the Trinity works. And so there's an implicit belief in it, in that the individual, they're implicitly orthodox by participating in this tradition, and they're not doing something wrong by not understanding it, as long as the heart of faith is open, to clarification and stuff like that. They're implicitly trusting the church to get it right. Well, that was the context for then when the Reformation takes off, and the pre-Reformation people, uh, um, Jan Hus or Luther, right? Like if there's this notion of implicit belief, but then the institution that's, you know, giving it veracity is problematizing itself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you move beyond a picture of faith in the different Protestantisms where it's not trusting God by trusting the church, but this personal response to faith, then that task of implicit belief gets kind of dialed up again, where now you, the individual, need to believe, right? And so in early Protestantism, a lot of those debates between people about the nature of
Mm-hmm.
the Eucharist or
Mm-hmm.
baptism and stuff are all connected to the sense that you are obligated to understand the truth of biblical Christianity and affirm it. Um, and and it's now you're the one bearing the burden of it. So like, we just got back from Europe. We are in Zurich, and my children were stuck listening to me talk about um, the early Anabaptist martyrs, and and I'm reading dramatically little selections from their letters from prison. Felix Mons, we went to where he was drowned. His third baptism by Zwingli and Company in a river, which the third baptism was death. And and in it, he's like, his argument is like, you're right when you're critiquing Rome and blah 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 blah. Like, where in the world is baby baptism in the Bible? I'm doing what Jesus did. He was baptized an adult. The disciples baptized adults. Like, you can't tell me we have to have faith in the form, the description of it's based on Scripture, and then you're mad at me for baptizing adults when that's what the disciples did. And he's like, don't give me that one thing in Acts where he baptized the whole household and decide that's secretly normative for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that shift of implicit belief now put all this burden of understanding, articulating, defending, and legitimating your belief on the individual, right? And I think just seeing that, like, belief and faith used to be more about trust, then faith, like, implicitly affirms these beliefs, and now faith, part of the task of faith, is legitimating your beliefs as an individual. That shift is a good way of understanding this approach. And I think one of the challenges for faith traditions, and hopefully as we move out of our current modern context, is like, what does faith after belief look like, where belief isn't the legitimating assumptions for the veracity of faith, but faith orients itself in relationship to belief differently, not where you can recede right to this kind of more pre-modern one where there's some implicit trust in an external authority,
Mm-hmm.
but a trust in the nature of ultimacy to uh, hold one's trust, love, and care that's expressed in love and care for the other, without it having to be, you know, over determined by articulation and certainty on particular beliefs. But
You know, I'm of two minds on this. One is we either embrace sort of a nihilistic, defeatist attitude, which many in the mainline decline narrative have done, and essentially just acknowledge that we are those who live among the ruins and the remains, that the structural and architectural facade is still upright at some level, but essentially we just live among the abandoned remnants and remainders of the ruins, right? And that's sort of our task, that we are to lose. Lyle Schaller, did you ever encounter Lyle Schaller's different sized churches thing?
uh-uh.
In church growth circles back in the 80s and 90s, he was a big deal. And I've always loved his analogies, but he talks about, like, churches like ours were set up to be an elephant, but now we're as big as a cat, but our bone structure remains elephant size. And so things like apportionments, as my church gets smaller and the offerings are smaller, my portion of what I have to pay to be United Methodist, my apportionments go up, right? And it's just, there's a sort of a weird um attrition that sets in, and like an old elephant, it just doesn't have the muscle mass that it once did, but it still has the same size bone structure. Anyway, So we either go down that road, or you can do what I'm trying to do, which is to say, no, we'll never be as big on Sunday morning. We'll never have 500 children in Sunday school. We'll never, right, have the impact that we did, right, where our heyday has passed us. But in a consumer society, people are self-selecting to participate. So Trip, the other night, I had a book group in the summer. I do a Wednesday night book group, and we're reading Richard Rohr's The Universal Christ. And it's a small group, but in that group, there's somebody in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. So by embracing multi-generational ministry and having it be conversational in nature, people come together and we trade notes and we learn from each other by looking at our different experiences and perspectives. So is it as glorious as the heyday was in post-World War II mainline Christianity? No. But in a consumer culture, people are self-selecting, and you can embrace that and say multi-generational ministry is one of the most life-giving things that we have to offer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
where else would that group of people ever come together and listen to each other? Never.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The language in the question. Yeah. That's good. I'm just deciding not to have another detour because I don't think we've ever covered this many questions in one thing.
We're doing great. And we didn't even start till minute 47.
Maybe that's what it is we need longer intros. That's what the world needs. Um, all right. So here we go. You mentioned that art, nature, and politics are becoming alternative spheres of transcendence. How do these compare to traditional religion? When I talked about that, I was talking about Hartmut Rosa, who in his sociology, he has a big text called Resonance. And there he's wanting to talk about that sense of, like the humming connectivity of things, like when you are experiencing deep resonance, you become more porous in relationship to whatever it is. And if you and he kind of talks about these four trajectories or relationships of resonance, which art, nature, politics are ones, but obviously religion or the transcendent is one. And as the transcendent is muted sociologically in our culture, that desire for resonance doesn't dissipate, so it comes alive in things like art, nature, politics, all of which have the potential of being life-giving or destructive, but they have a different staying power. The social psych data on experiences of resonance that aren't grounded in ultimacy kind of function differently. But he's in, like, one of the things about that analysis is that these responsive relationships outside of institutional forms, part of that attentiveness is because those institutional forms have become mute due to the kind of acceleration process that's taking place in culture. And in traditional societies, religious identity was given, not chosen, but modernity's kind of contraction of the present, which is one of his lines I find kind of helpful. It makes stable religious belonging and something that's given, not chosen, feel impossible. So take like what we talked about earlier, like the nuns kind of reflect this loss of a porous self connection to transcendent order and a hunger for vertical resonance, like relationships that fit with totality exceeding the individual. Those hunger for it still persists, and so it seeks new forms outside of temporal institutions that feel, or institutions that feel kind of temporally incapable with the change in life. And one of the things I think that helps is for Rosa, he kind of talks about how our cultural shift of acceleration of pressures end up reducing, it reduces these encounters with the other to kind of a superficial form of multiculturalism rather than a deep resonance with otherness, which is something um, that shifts. And the um, the challenge for religious traditions is in this kind of collapsing of things into the present and the multiplicity, how do you have distinct temporal rhythms and resonance practices when you're doing this with a community that exists, you know, in a host of other communities? And so the like in many ways, like art, nature, politics, you can think of ways resonance happens in beautiful and disturbing ways with them. But what Rosa talks about in one of his recent books called "Why Democracy Needs Religion" is the these other spheres have then been metabolized by our modern market system and start to put, like, you don't go spend a week in nature, you glamp and get your Instagram pictures over a picture, right? Like we've started even having like monetizing experiences, simulating transcendence in these other ways, right? So he talks about the number of people, members of art museums, are higher than ever, and the number of attenders are lower. So in one of the challenges, like he's like, here's a gift of religion, is it's so old it didn't know that it had to accommodate a form of life that late modern capitalism has generated. And when it does itself well, it invites you into a different rhythm and a different thing. And that is a gift and a good all on its own, regardless of the veracity of the, you know, the statements. And so as a sociologist, someone that's like not deeply religious, but has a tangential relationship with religious traditions, his family in Germany were kind of a Hindu sect. And then he fell in love with the Lutheran Church because he loves organs and he plays organs and he loves the music. Anyway, so yeah, he's got he's not like a traditional religious German citizen, but as a sociologist, he lifts up just the power in religious traditions to offer alternative ways of relating to your space and your time and your calendar and your seasons of life, that we don't see those developing in other spaces.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, like, if you're within one of those traditions, one of the gifts you give to the world isn't accommodating to the acceleration narrative, but providing a community with a different speed of existence.
Yeah. Trip, you know, as a Trinitarian, I always do threes, everything in threes. So to this question, I like to ask, is this thing that we do, this community of faith, is it a complement to consumerism? Is it a supplement, or is it an alternate? And to me, the way that we structure our approach are profoundly different paths. So if, say, in the megachurch context, that it's a complement, right? It fits in. You can go from the megachurch to the mall, to the cinema, and to the Red Robin seamlessly, right? It just complements in there. To some people, though, we are a supplement. And I hear this most in the concern that people say, look, culture is so chaotic right now. My life is so, nutty. When I come to church, I want it to be stable and predictable and the same. And so it supplements their life. It's not the main diet, but it's like a multivitamin that they take on Sundays, right? To fill in the gaps. And then so often in progressive churches like ours, we view ourselves as an alternate, that we are a transgressive or prophetic voice against the injustices and the unbalances of society. And we view ourselves as an alternate approach, right? This is a different way of being in the world. And we talk about kingdom and we talk about, so I really think that if you are a complement or a supplement or an alternate are three different ways of doing the same exact thing, but they lead to three entirely different manifestations and expressions.
Ooh. It's similar to what was it? The therapeutic, prophetic, apocalyptic?
Messianic was the third.
Okay. Messianic. All right.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, when I remembered that conversation, I guess I changed it to apocalyptic, but
yeah, you did.
So when I forget that it was your idea and then say it back to you in a year from now, You can be like, have you considered calling apocalyptic messianic?
You know what? If it would get me a book deal, I would change it.
You're like, I'm open.
I am.
The okay, I put a few more of these questions. Let's do 3 more.
All right. Lightning round.
All right. Why are mega churches and prosperity gospel thriving while mainline churches decline? What does this tell us about what Americans really want from religion?
Yep. We have said it in multiple ways, but we'll just reiterate it. In late capitalism, consumer society, self-selecting cafeteria Christianity, a barista approach to spirituality, there is something about the satisfying effect of that self-selecting participation in community and practice, and you really can't get around it. I think that covers it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everything about that's depressing.
So that would be the therapeutic, right? That's
Yeah.
That's that form of Christianity.
Yeah, it's very popular. All right. What's the difference between faith and belief, and why does this distinction matter for contemporary spiritual life?
Dinah Butler Bass does a good job with this. I'm trying to think of which book it is that she tackles this. I don't have
Isn't
them
it
in
like
front
Christianity
of me.
without religion?
Okay, or for the rest of us?
Those are both books.
Yeah. Speaking of book deals, she is a prolific author. By the way, if you're not following her on Substack, you definitely should. She is enjoying that medium, that platform a lot. So let's do this in a confirmation context. When we have beliefs and we list our beliefs, often, not always, but often they are mental constructs and ideas, abstract ideas that we assent to or consent to. And beliefs are important, right? Not just doctrinal, but like commitments of faith and life. Beliefs are important, but they're largely mental or intellectual for many people. Faith, I think, is the richer field in that it integrates and incorporates practice and communal expressions that are both inherited. There's a givenness to them. They came to us. And there's a praxis involved. You actually have to do it. You have to do something with your faith. So you can mentally assent to beliefs, things that you can diagram or list as bullet points or come up with a belief statement or a doctrinal statement. But I think faith is the broader category, and it has the more fertile possibility of being integrated into a whole life expression. That would be my take.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one thing I would add is just, there's this, if faith is not something that is legitimated or enacted through assent to ideas, but it's a form of life, then the difference between faith and belief, I think, can be helpful, because one can have faith in the sense of trusting or wagering one's finitude in a particular narrative, tradition, direction. Like, what are you going to do with your own existence? And if you're going to seize your own existence and use it and claim it, right? How are you going to orient your finitude? In that sense, you can risk faith and the beliefs can be in process. And I think that kind of shift is something, kind of first emerges, in more academic or philosophical context in the 19th century. But the reason it emerges, or a series of questions in a modern world that problematizes certain kinds of beliefs, where then you go, oh, well, maybe those beliefs don't make faith possible, but faith creates the conditions, like where you're existentially oriented, that then your beliefs get developed in the process of living out one's deeper convictions. And so you can go, I could be like, well, I'm kind of mildly aware of what I can have a lot stronger faith in my beliefs, where then I might be, well, I'm 60-40 on X, Y, and Z. But existentially, one can uh, orient their existence as if, and I think that like, if we're able to articulate wisdom traditions that way, they become partners rather than burdens in what do you do with your existence. And they possess wisdom practices and communities that could no longer have assenting to a set of beliefs as like the a priori for belonging and joining and such.
One of my favorite sermons that I ever get to give is about the different Greek words for knowledge. And so in there, you'd have techne, from which we get technical, and you have poiesis, which we don't have sort of an equivalent that has come into English, and phronesis, which is my favorite form of knowing. But my favorite line in that sermon is that I don't believe everything I do, and I don't do everything I believe. And that really seems, I know it sounds like post-structural and Peter Rollins being, playful with language and whimsical. But for me, this is, I think, the paradox of belief is that I don't do everything I believe, and I don't believe in everything I do. And so belief can only get you so far. It's great. And, if it's one step, but if that's like stepping forward with your left foot, but it'll only get you so far.
Yeah. All right. Last question, Bo.
All right, let's do it.
From an evolutionary perspective, why do humans seem hardwired for religious behavior? And what does this tell us about our current religious trends? I'll just say we don't seem hardwired for religious behavior. We are, right? And this is just generally true in evolutionary psych and cognitive science of religion, whether the scientists reporting on their best account of things is religious or not, right? In that same scientific data, you could have someone like Justin Barrett, who's been on the podcast recently, interpret it and think, oh, well, should you be surprised if you're a theist that human beings are, evolved cognitive mechanisms that make believing in ultimacy of some sort natural? Or you could be like Pascal Boyer and is like, well, this is why it's an evolutionary adaptation that may be past its purchase date. Or you could be Robert McCullough, who was on the podcast, that is like, I'm just trying to understand this, and I'm not really sure how you would settle particular religious traditions, right, in a more kind of ambiguous state. So, like, from the sciences that look at human evolution, like, we are hardwired for religious belief. Even someone like Paul Bloom, who's an atheist, in his book Descartes' Baby, is just looking like, no, but like, we have, the agency detection device thing, theory of mind, like all these kind of teleological reasoning, these things that if you develop cognitively as a human in kind of the normative way, belief in non-material agents is natural. So what does that say about our current religious trends? Is that you don't have to grow up in a religious community in order to have a brain or cognitive mechanisms that will interpret existence using those mechanisms, right? And so it can lead to oh, I deconstructed and I hate religion, but I also play with tarot cards and keep up with my sign and stuff, right? Like, so
Yeah.
they're those
Horoscopes.
mechanisms can get utilized in all these different cultural means.
Essential oils.
And so, uh, uh, in some sense, that makes you go, for thinking about religious trends, and you're a part of one of those traditions. I think you go, okay, well, if we know human beings function this way, how do we actually help them facilitate their humanity in life-giving ways, right? So think of how many of the things religions do, and it binds people together, orients them for service and sacrifice and stuff, that mainline Protestants, because of our rationalist kind of infatuation, have just excised that from our worship life or formation and stuff. Like, the idea of a modern Enlightenment person rationally legitimating any belief before they act on it is like, that is a unique work. Like, that's just not humans in any historic sense. And so I think we've cut out of a lot of our congregations and spiritual formations real spiritual technologies that exist in religious traditions globally and historically and outside of them. And we were like, well, we're too smart to do this, right? Like, you'd hate to sing a song that's moving about care for your love, neighbor, and enemy because it's too close to Jesus is my boyfriend music, or that's all there. So, like, in one sense, I would say, yeah, we're hardwired for it. So those mechanisms will have cultural and communal consequences regardless of the veracity of any belief in a God. And once you know that's how humans are made and how religions function, even before belief emerges, then maybe those tools, gifts, and parts of being human are things we should re-embrace within religious traditions that thought we should be iconoclastic and get rid of art or ecstatic experiences, or the kind of religious rituals that generate um, you know uh, like ecstatic religious experiences, or like the return of psychedelics and such. Anyway, to me, it's a fascinating thing, just because every scientist I know would answer, like, that studies it, would be like, yes, we're hardwired for religious behavior, and that they could have what that tells them about the world varies dramatically. So, like, knowing that, then what does it tell us about our religious trends or the current shifts in, is it human beings are going to have those mechanisms? How do we have them wisely? And I would just say that if uh, if someone used to be Episcopalian but now they're QAnon, we might want to um, use them well. So I don't know what comes to mind though.
Two things. Chapter 7 of The Universal Christ by Richard Rohr is about evolution and how it brings about new creation. There's a chapter, subheading, how God keeps the world both good and new. And he has an evolutionary approach. And there's something really beautiful about it. One of the lines somebody quoted that caught my attention was, to be alive is to change, and perfection is impossible unless you have made lots of changes. I just something like that, and it really caught my attention. Like the embrace of evolutionary, there's a potential beauty in that.
Mm-hmm.
The person I want to warn you about, the false prophet, is somebody who used to be religious but has abandoned that for evolutionary psychology. And the key phrase you want to be aware of is when they say X is nothing but. The phrase nothing but exposes a reductive naturalism, and you want to get away from this person. If they used to be religious and they've now moved to evolutionary psychology and they use the phrase nothing but as a reductive dismissal, do not listen to that person.
Oh my. Yeah. Or it's just
Yeah.
right.
So if you say,
if you think
there's
of
no,
like different types of causality, right? So
yep,
if you're holding your baby for the first time, and then you have like that one friend, well, it's just your genes wanting to get into the next generation, or
there
it's
you go.
just this
That's it.
chemical thing, and you're
That's
like,
it.
well, no, it is that. But
Yes.
if you
And
think a thick account of this entire experience of holding, say, Elgin for the first time, and him looking at me and screaming bloody murder because I wasn't the one he wanted, but she was getting stitched back up.
Mm.
And you're like, I don't care if you hate me and don't want to see me right now. My entire existence is different. You don't go, well, that's just, or well, that's nothing but, the endorphins of bonding that get you to sacrifice for him or whatever, right? So that nothing but or it's just is a kind of causal fundamentalism that sets up things
Preach.
that like really smart people I I find them to falsify in their own life when talking to them. And I've told stories about a number of my encounters with the different new atheists where I'm like, but your own life like is oriented around these other things. And where one of them was like, well, I love my genetic fan fiction. And the other one's like, well, we know it's not, but we know it's not real. And I was like, not real. I'm like, yeah, but the everything in your entire being changes if your kid is sick. So what is it's an attachment to this and this, and you get this kind of like atheist adaptation of Buddhism. And to me, that's one of those places, and there's a number of these issues where I just as a philosopher, I think your account of reality has to hold these in it, right? So take the origin of the universe. There's a lot of different theories that can cohere with what we know cosmologically, but it's not like there's nothing in our space-time to talk about what happened before space-time. Where did life come from? Mind, both of those questions, and they could have same or different answer, but it's not like there's a scientific explanation where this is why there's mind or consciousness. This is why there's life, and aesthetics and value are like that as well, right? And so that moment of holding a child or of like eye contact where you realize we're going to get married, or the friend that said I forgive you, or like there are all these things that are part of human experience that they are required for a thick account of our own identity, that if those aren't included in your account of the universe, then it's flat, right? And so some of that way that logic plays out, because oftentimes the people that say that, they aren't the ones that, they didn't do the scientific research to discover X, Y, and Z. They're looking for a scientific narrative that legitimates their prejudice towards right that thing. So and I can tell this usually in comment threads where something on the internet, now they're like, just because they saw the word Christianity in it, now there's like this long discourse about flying spaghetti monsters or whatever. And I'm just like, one, I don't think you know me, and two, like I've used to respond, like to point out basic things about cognitive scientists, and then they respond to it the same way fundamentalist Christians do, where it's just like, no, my prior givens that I hold with a level of tenacity that should there been a hell, you should go there. Doesn't have credence to this.
Dude, I don't know if it's just because we're been doing this for almost 2 hours or if this touched a nerve, but you and I are throwing haymakers right now in a way we normally are much more measured and ironic. We're not happy about this. Let me just say, like, here's an example. Let me just if somebody says, well, there's no such thing as love, it's just certain endorphins and combination, like, get out of here, man. But they do it with religion. That's the thing, is they'll say there is no God or whatever, or revelation, whatever. It's just the synapses in your brain, firing in a sequence, to try and find an explanatory thing about, natural things like lightning, and it must be the gods or angry and sending fire down to the earth, and right, like that reductive dismissal is so boring and infuriating, but it comes with such conviction and certainty that it has to be combated.
Yeah. It reminds me of this when I was working on the Story of God Morgan Freeman show.
Okay.
And as part of that, I got to go to Barry Taylor was with me. We went to the Beverly Hills Hilton for this National Geographic premiere of some other show, but they were like, you get invited, and you're not going to turn down going to the Beverly Hills Hilton.
I used to live one block from there. Yeah.
You're not going to turn down going because you want to see what, like, so we get there. It's it's fascinating because of the connection to the other show, they're like treating you like real media as
Yeah.
opposed to like you have a podcast
Yeah.
and stuff. But I end up in this conversation with a couple, Jason Silva, who's been on the podcast and had a different National Geographic show, and a couple others that are like philosophy, religion, science type people were talking. And then Neil deGrasse Tyson comes over.
Oh.
And I was telling the story to Jason about Elgin, who at this time, is like 7 or 8. And, like buddies are playing video games and they're having conversations, and parents, especially I'm sure clergy, are like, listen in, you might get new material for a sermon illustration. And his friend's like, they start talking about God. And his friend says, I feel like if God existed, then God should just come tell me. And Elgin's like, well, like, and again, this is my son, so I don't think he understood what he was saying. He's just saying shit I said.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, well, God doesn't exist. God's eternal. And I was like, thank you, son. And then his friend's like, what's that mean? He goes, I don't know. and he goes, well, I just, he's going on saying like, if God exists, and he wants like proof or something like that. And Elgin's response was, well, do you think love exists? And he's like, yeah, I guess. And he goes, well, what proved it to you? And his friend said, well, it happened. And Elgin's response was, that's how you know about God, is it happens. God happens. And then because it happened one time and it's there in that moment, then you go, oh, well, that's maybe something that's a potential other moments, right? And he's like, well, then if love can happen when your mom does blah, 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 or, this, and then you feel like the love of God or whatever, then you go, oh, well, that kind of love's there as a potential with my mom, and now it's there anywhere because it's God. And and Jason and I were talking about, and Neil is just, I had a conversation one time with Rick Warren, who tried that love thing on me. You can't prove love exists, blah, blah, blah. And he goes into the whole scientific reduction thing, and I don't like him that much, but and Barry, not like ardent defender of the reality of God, Barry Taylor, radical theologian, and I'm just like, yeah, but and Barry was just like, a life with it, anyone that wants to describe a world without love should just F off.
That sounds like Barry. Yeah.
And it wasn't coming in with a defense of God, but he was pointing out like, no, like you two can have your science debate and do that if you want. But I'm just saying you aren't winning any points when, in order to avoid discussing this, you now are telling me love's not real. And he's like, well, then what's the point? And you could just, anyway, it was one of those moments where you're like, oh, I love Barry Taylor.
Yeah, I do.
I was ready to give like an explanation and be like, one, he's 7, so what kind of analogy are you looking for? I'm sorry, Rick Warren never advanced his apologetic techniques past my son. But anyway, it was one of those moments where that enactment happened. And then Jason Silva's there, and he's not like Christian in any normal sense. But he does like psychedelic and religion studies and ecstatic experiences and all these kinds of things. And so it was this weird vibe where you have like the atheist theologian, the psychonaut, and then the mainline Protestant clergy all going like, look, yeah, we can all debate about God, but honestly, like, are we really going to flatten the universe where where love's not real?
Wow.
That's what it made me think of your.
Yep. Same. That's a great
weird thing that happened at that. They had like this 15-foot ice block that maybe was 30 feet wide behind the bar.
Okay.
This is why you say yes to showing up at these things and pretend you belong. Where it was the premiere for the Mars TV show, about like, and so this giant 15-foot ice sculpture is shaped like Mars, and the specialty drink for it, they would mix it up. They go up a ladder, pour it down a hole, and then it comes out chilled, like So like instead of like shaking the ice thing like that, they just would mix it up without the ice in it. It would roll down the ice into your cup.
La La Land.
Yeah. I was told that those kind of promotion budgets just aren't there for public science work
for
anymore.
Beer camp.
Oh, no. Yeah, they should. That's what we need.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if the Mars TV show wants to attempt to have
Mm-hmm.
a comeback on streaming, they want to sponsor a giant ice statue at camp.
Listen, if there's anywhere you and I can find an ice slide, it's going to be Minnesota.
Yeah,
That
I'm just
that
saying.
would be that would be fun to bring in.
Do you want to know something that I'm like, that Kristen came back and actually found someone that would do one of my weird ideas?
Yeah.
And this, I think, is going to be the part of camp I'm looking forward to the most, and I'm
Okay.
confident it's going to be on your list. I
Okay.
can't know if it's going to, it'd be in your top 3. Okay,
Okay.
so when we have the bottle share, right? And there's 600 people here that bring beer from all over the country, right? So, and then there's a team, I only know 2 of them, that for the last 4 years collect it all, organize it by style, and have it all set up. I just go out there during the cigar time, right?
Yeah.
Some people are smoking cigars and we're having
Yeah.
our conversations. And then there's there's all these different beer styles, beers all over the place, right? One of the
Yeah.
coolers are giant stouts that beer nerds know about, that they only
Mm-hmm.
give to beer nerds because they don't want like
Mm-hmm.
randos that don't know craft
Yep.
beer having an
Yep.
18% barrel aged chocolate stout, right?
Right.
Okay, I'm pretty sure we're going to rent a soft serve ice cream truck and make beer floats while we're
Oh,
having our cigar time. And
brilliant.
we actually have a cigar rep that's coming to bring cigars and run the cigar time this year. So
Wow.
imagine one of the cigar reps there got free cigars, cutters and stuff. We're all making sure everyone knows how to light and smoke and stuff. If they're relatively new, give them the lighter, not so strong ones. Some of us take the strong. And then you got your
Robusto.
pint glass on it, float, mega stout. Come on, Bo Daddy.
I'm loving it. I'm loving
I
it.
if Jesus comes back before that, I'll be disappointed.
Well, on that note, this has been a delightful conversation. Thank you for all who were in the comments section. I've loved seeing the dialogue going on over there. I wrote down some stuff I need to Google, some recommendations from the deacons. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, and this is fun. We'll probably do some more questions, but people can send them in. The what's the here? I'll check real quick what the link is on this, but
Okay.
I feel like it's like, oh, stop. I want to read it. I'll get it wrong if I try to remember. But if you're on Substack in like the message area, or like the, what do they call it? The chat area for Process This, there is a link in there. It's castfeedback.com/HBC or TNT. And then you can leave a voice message or a text one.
Nice.
And since it has the text option, more people were doing text because I think I don't know. I think some people don't want us playing their voice on here. Maybe that's why we had all international callers last time. I mean, it was like almost all international.
It was, yeah.
So you can leave a text message if you don't have a cool accent. But if you have a cool accent, we request
we want
the
to hear
audio.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, this has been fun. And Lori, I'll see you at 3. At 3 is when the Ryan Bird stream is with. It's going to be the first time he's showing a bunch of his data on the nuns from their big study, and announcing some stuff. And then tonight at 9:00 Eastern is a stream for the Democracy and Tension Summit with Aaron Simmons and Matthew Segal's coming. And we got some doozy of questions from people that have been watching all the political philosophy lectures.
Wow.
And such.
Wow.
So, yeah, but those, I do those streams in Sidebow because I have to be more professional.
They're more they're more formal. Yeah.
But Moses is smoking a cigar in our logo. So
all right, man. Well, my physiology is overcoming my spirituality, and I need to go to the.
Yeah, that's a new